Let me tell you about the biggest blind loser you've ever seen. His name is Kunen, and the guy was born with the hero's scar on his body. You'd think that would make him some kind of legendary chosen one, right? Wrong. All it did was make him blind. Not exactly the power-up you'd hope for. The universe basically looked at this kid and said, you know what? Let's take away his eyesight and give him a cool scar so everyone feels sorry for him. And for years, that's exactly what happened. People pitied him. Servants whispered behind his back. His own future was looking about as bright as a dungeon with the lights off. But here's where the pathetic blind nerd does something that should be impossible. Instead of crying about his situation, like any reasonable person would, he decides to use magic to create his own eyes. Yeah, you heard that right. This guy, who can't even see his own hand in front of his face, decides he's going to build working eyeballs out of water magic. It's the kind of insane ambition that either makes you a genius or gets you committed to an asylum. Spoiler alert, he actually pulls it off, and that's when things get really weird. The story begins with Kunen wondering what it actually means to see. Everyone tells him his eyes don't work, so he's been thinking about this his whole life. His father explains that seeing is just the ability to perceive colors and shapes. Kunen's eyes carry the hero's scar left by the holy knight Hester, and his father says that's a mark of pride. So the kid nods and accepts the weight of those words, because what else is he supposed to do? Some maids feel sorry for him, but Kunen doesn't understand why. He's never known any other reality, so why would he pity himself? One day, Kunen is taken to meet a lady named Jenny, and he wonders if he really needs to study magic. They tell him it would be a waste not to, since he was born with the water crest. Using magic is something special, so they want him to make the most of it. Kunen, however, isn't so optimistic. Even if he learns magic, he can't go anywhere without help. So this blind kid is already at a disadvantage before he even starts. Jenny introduces herself as his magic tutor, and they begin the first lesson. She instructs Kunen to say the spell word, and she's impressed when he manages to cast it on the first try. Kunen asks what kind of magic it is, and Jenny explains it's water magic. Unfortunately, Kunen can't see his own amazing feat, so Jenny describes it in detail. The spell is called Iori, and it lets him produce water using magic. She says the water is crystal clear and about the size of an eyeball. The moment she mentions eyes, Kunen's brain goes into overdrive. He has an idea. If he gets better at magic, maybe he can create eyes for himself. And just like that, the pathetic blind loser finds a new purpose in life. His goal is to create his own eyes using magic. With this new perspective, everything becomes more interesting. Even the sandwich he's eating seems fascinating. He's never thought about it before, but now he wonders what's inside. He asks his maid what the grass-looking thing is, and she explains it's lettuce. The spicy part is mustard, and the sweet part is a plum. Even the maid is enjoying his newfound curiosity about food. She says cooking has become more fun now, so she's prepared several dishes for him. Next, Kunen goes to another lesson. He says he'd like to hear the story of the holy knight Hester, but the teacher is shocked. She's not sure it's a good idea, but Kunen's maid assures her he's ready. The teacher warns him to let her know if the story gets too heavy, but Kunen tells her not to worry. He's thirsty for knowledge and wants to learn as much as he can. The teacher explains that long ago, there was a war between the world's heroes and the demon lord. Hester was the hero of this nation and the one who defeated the demon lord. Unfortunately, he paid the price, losing an arm and a leg in the battle. Since that war, every now and then, Hester's descendants are born missing something. They're born without an arm or leg, or in Kunen's case, without sight. People call these children reincarnations of the hero or bearers of the hero's scar. While practicing magic, Kunen thinks about being one of those reincarnations. He doesn't let it define him, because he is himself, and the magic he uses is his own power. His practice goes well. He manages to control water much better now, splitting water spheres into perfectly equal shapes. He gains confidence with each training session, and renews his vow to create new eyes with magic. He refuses to let anything stop him, but using magic is exhausting. He's been practicing non-stop since he started, and his body finally gives in. He says he needs much more, and his maid Aiko assumes he means more of her affection. She brags about covering him with unlimited love, which has been helping with training. He quickly corrects her. What he really needs is more knowledge and endurance. That's what's necessary for strong magic, and he's more determined than ever. Aiko reminds him that he's only 7 years old, so he'll grow, but Kunen refuses to waste time. Passing out from basic magic is unacceptable, so he needs to improve. Aiko has a great idea. He should eat more to have more energy. Doing it too fast could cause problems, so they'll do it in phases. Kunen likes the idea and says he also wants to strengthen his muscles. Unfortunately, he's not good at running or walking, so Aiko suggests he practice swordsmanship. Kunen loves the idea, so Aiko runs off to find the best swordsman to teach him. Before leaving, Kunen thanks her for her help, and she thanks him for the compliment. Time passes, and Kunen has started his sword training. His instructor is named Oro, and he tells Kunen to pay attention to the muscles in his arms and shoulders. He's very detailed in his lesson, instructing him to strike in the order of shoulders, elbows, and wrists. Eventually, Jenny arrives for the next lesson, so Kunen thanks Master Oro. Jenny is surprised to see Kunen learning swordsmanship, and he explains it's to help improve his magic. He needs more knowledge and endurance, so a more reliable body will be very useful. Jenny can't believe how much Kunen has changed since they met just a few days ago. She says he can take a break, but Kunen is eager to start. Jenny decides they'll review the Iori spell from the last lesson, so she tells him to start with what he remembers. She says it's fine if he forgot, then she's shocked to see his immense progress. He can summon several spheres at once, and Jenny is speechless. She only taught him a bit of the spell, so she can't believe he's already mastered so much on his own. This kind of progress is scary, but the most shocking thing is that Kunen doesn't even realize how amazing it is. Meanwhile, a girl named Mirica is told her carriage is ready. Mirica wishes she didn't have to go, so her maid wonders if she hates the idea of visiting her fiancé that much. Mirica points out that Kunen probably feels the same, since he always looks so sad when they meet. Unfortunately, Mirica has no choice. It was the king who decided. As she goes to visit Kunen, she thinks about how he was born with the hero's scar. That makes him a very important person to the kingdom, so the political marriage is part of her royal obligation. Unfortunately, Mirica doesn't have good memories of Kunen because he was always so sad. She'd ask what he wanted to play, but he'd say he didn't want to play anything. He explained that he couldn't do anything or go anywhere alone, so there was nothing he wanted to do. Mirica couldn't stand hearing that and didn't expect to have to look at such a sad face for the rest of her life. When she arrives, though, she's shocked to be greeted by a much happier Kunen. She wonders what changed. Kunen reveals he's fallen in love with magic. He doesn't waste time and shows her what he can do. She's amazed by the beautiful water spheres he creates. He turns the water into a beautiful rainbow and takes a moment to apologize to Mirica. He knows being around him must have been difficult, so he asks forgiveness for making her walk on eggshells around him. Kunen asks if she'd like to hear the stories he has to tell about his progress. Mirica is incredulous. Kunen is a completely different person, and she didn't even know he could make such a happy face. She accepts the invitation, and they spend the whole day together. On the way home, Mirica thinks about how much fun she had. Kunen, meanwhile, thinks about how he never offered Mirica his hand like that before. Aiko points out it's because he's a gentleman, so Kunen decides to learn more about that too. He asks Miss Flora to teach him how to behave around Princess Mirica. He enjoyed spending time with her, so he wants to become a gentleman worthy of her. That night, Jenny can't stop thinking about what she saw. Kunen created 7 beautiful water spheres at the same time, and even she can't do that. He's already perfected elementary magic and is learning too fast for her to keep up. There's nothing left for her to teach, so she decides they'll have to move on to intermediate magic. Jenny holds back, because this might overwhelm Kunen. This should have been a sweet job where she got paid well to teach basic magic to a child, but it's turning into something else. He's advancing rapidly and shows no signs of stopping. The problem is that while magic is convenient, it can also be dangerous. So Aiko determines that it's too early for 7-year-old Kunen to learn sophisticated magic. But it's also too early to give up. So Jenny is determined to find the best way to teach him. Plus, she says she can't give up because she has bills to pay. The next day, she tells Kunen they'll try something different. Kunen is ready to start and doesn't refuse. He declares that hearing her suggestion with that beautiful voice makes him accept anything she has to say. Kunen's charm is off the charts now because of what Flora taught him, so Jenny can't believe he's changed even more. She starts a new lesson, explaining that the Iori spell he uses only creates water. However, if the spell is broken down into the different types of magic used, Kunen will understand better. The Iori spell can be separated into the act of producing water, making it float, and keeping its spherical shape. If they break it down further, they'll see there are many more things that can be controlled. Temperature, viscosity, composition, color, shape, aroma, and taste. Jenny demonstrates by forming 2 spheres and asking Kunen to touch them. He does, and immediately notices one is cold and the other hot. Jenny says magical alterations give personality to magic, but Kunen doesn't understand what she means. She explains that personality is what defines and differentiates each mage and their talents. By making alterations to their magic, a mage can create original types of magic that are uniquely theirs. Kunen now understands, realizing he can alter the fine details of his magic and infuse his own characteristics into it. He uses Iori again, but this time, he does something different. He has her drink the water and she's surprised to find it tastes like plum. She's impressed, but Jenny is terrified. She stayed up all night to prepare this lesson on magical alteration, but Kunen mastered it in seconds. He says it wasn't easy, but promises his teacher he'll learn to make all the alterations as fast as possible. That night, Kunen has been studying non-stop, practicing even in bed. He thinks about how he can distinguish the shape and smell of things, but doesn't know colors because he can't see. Without being able to do that, Kunen knows he won't be able to create magical alterations, and definitely won't be able to create eyeballs. He reassures himself, though, that he'll find a way, because he desperately wants to see everything the world has to offer. Time passes, and Aiko asks Kunen to create some water for her to make tea. Kunen uses Aori to create another sphere and moves it toward her as usual. However, as the water approaches, Kunen gasps in disbelief. Aiko wonders if something's wrong, and Kunen reveals he thinks he just saw something. Aiko doesn't believe he managed to see, so she says if he's joking, she'll punish him. Kunen says he's not sure either, and technically, he didn't really see. He explains exactly what happened. His eyes didn't see anything, but he feels like he saw colors with his magic. It was more like he felt the appearance of things, but he can't explain it properly. Kunen then holds up an apple and wonders if it's red. The apple is actually green, so Kunen picks another and gets it right this time. Aiko is amazed because this means Kunen can sense colors. The only problem is that the names of the colors don't match for him yet. That's understandable since Kunen has never seen them before, so he just needs to learn to associate the words with what he can now detect. Aiko thinks they should test his new ability, so she instructs him to count how many apples there are. Kunen counts 3 red apples and 2 green ones. Aiko is amazed again. He really can see things with his magic, and it's like a miracle. Later, Kunen's father is shocked to learn that his son can see colors. Aiko explains it's only at short range, but Kunen definitely seems able to recognize colors. The closer an item is, the clearer it becomes, and he can also tell the color when he touches them. Kunen can even use this on books, tracking the ink to recognize colors in images. He hasn't learned to read letters yet, but he's already consumed several illustrated books and encyclopedias. Arsène is very impressed with Kunen's growth, so he says Aiko should return to the main house. Her job was to take care of Kunen because he needed constant attention due to his condition, but he doesn't seem to need that anymore. Aiko refuses the offer, pointing out that Kunen is trying to change a lot right now. Every day is a struggle for him, and changing his environment might stop him from achieving his goals. That's the last thing she wants, so Aiko decides to stay by his side. Arsène apologizes for putting so much responsibility on her, but Aiko loves her job and really enjoys the great salary. Arsène couldn't be happier and points out that Aiko's joy must be having a very good effect on Kunen. Aiko thanks him for his kind words but says instead of a compliment, she'd like a raise. Kunen wants to do more experiments. He explains that Jenny will arrive soon, so he wants to surprise her with something. Kunen uses Aori, but this time he colors the water red. He explains that when he makes the spheres bigger, he can sense the color more strongly. At that moment, Kunen's mother arrives after hearing that he can see colors with magic. Kunen compliments his mother like the refined gentleman he's learning to be, but he loses focus. His spell ends, covering Kunen and Aiko in red water. Kunen talks to his mother again, but it looks like he's covered in blood, and she's terrified. Kunen doesn't understand why his mother screamed, so Aiko has to explain that red is also the color of human blood. Arsène is furious with them, so he says Kunen is grounded and Aiko's salary will be cut. Absolute chaos ensues, and we see that Jenny is nearby. She's shocked because Kunen keeps advancing and becoming more terrifying every day. Jenny wonders how far he can go and thinks he might even win the greatest honor of this world. It's incredibly rare to win that title, but Jenny believes he could become a cerulean mage. 2 years later, Kunen has turned 9. Arsène determines they need to start thinking about Kunen's schooling, and we see him looking at an academy. Later, Arsène tells Kunen's brother, Ryota, that he's thinking of sending him to the school for noble children. Ryota is worried because Kunen has never left the mansion. Arsène is sure Kunen will be afraid of strangers in the outside world, and that's why he wants Ryota to accompany his brother. Ryota is very worried because of a bad memory. A few years ago, Kunen was afraid to go out and play, so Ryota assured him he'd be fine. He promised to hold Kunen's hand to help him, but the boy slipped. Ryota lost his brother and couldn't forgive himself for letting him down. He's eager to redeem himself, so he promises his father he'll protect Kunen at any cost. As for Kunen, he explains to Aiko that he's studying hydromancy. To do it, you must put water in a container processed with supernatural powers. This allows the user to predict the future or find lost items. Aiko wonders if they can search for the youth and beauty she's lost over the years, but this is just another sign for Kunen to use his charm. He shows how much he's progressed by telling Aiko not to worry, as she's young and in the prime of her youth. She wonders if they can use this to find a future husband. but the charming Kunen says men will line up to be with her. While Kunen has another lesson with Miss Flora, she can't stop thinking about how much he's progressed. She taught him the manners of a noble gentleman, and now he speaks with great confidence. Her only concern is that he might be seen as a bit shallow. Kunen doesn't help by complimenting his teacher. Still, she's relieved, because compared to how depressed he was 2 years ago, Kunen has become much sweeter. Then Aiko takes Kunen to see his father. Since it's freezing cold outside, Kunen uses Iori to create warm water orbs. The heat is super relaxing and Aiko is silly about how soft they are. Kunen explains that he wrapped the water in a super stretchy membrane, so the orbs feel like pillows. He says it's just a prototype, but Aiko already wants a bed made of this. Kunen wonders why his father wants to see him, afraid he's done something wrong. Aiko reminds him he hasn't caused any trouble lately since he learned his lesson from the fake blood incident 2 years ago. When they arrive, Kunen is greeted by his brother. Ryota asks if he wants to be guided by the hand, but Kunen refuses. He can sense the environment very well now, so he doesn't need help anymore. Ryota can't stop thinking about how his brother always depended on him, and Kunen senses something's wrong. Ryota says it's nothing. He's just impressed with what Kunen does with magic. When Kunen meets his parents, Arson says he has something important to discuss. Flora warned that Kunen finished the noble school curriculum. He's advanced a lot at home, but they want to know if he wants to go to a real school. Kunen bluntly says no, because he'd hate to bother others. Besides, he's decided to prioritize something else instead of school. Arson says he always thought Kunen should follow his heart, but there's a problem. Nobles are required to study, so Arson already arranged his spot at school. However, Arson agrees it's no longer necessary, and even got special permission from the king for him not to go. So he leaves the decision to Kunen, but warns there are other things to consider. Kunen thinks he means how he spends his allowance, but that's not it. The two start arguing because of this misunderstanding, as Kunen thinks his father is angry with him. He thinks Arson is still furious about him turning the garden into a sea of blood, but Arson has already forgotten about that. Only when reminded does he get annoyed and say Kunen is grounded again. After they calm down, Arson explains that what Kunen needs to think about is how the decision will affect Mirica. Those who don't fulfill noble obligations are at a disadvantage in high society. Since Kunen doesn't want to go, Mirica might be looked down upon when they marry. That's the last thing he wants, so he decides to go. Arson says he doesn't need to go for years, just needs to pass the promotion exams. Kunen has no idea what those are, so Arson explains. If he passes, he receives the official certificate. There are 5 exams, and the time depends on the student. Some people rush and graduate a few days after entering. Others take their time and study calmly. This is a relief for Kunen. It sounds easy, and he plans to be very fast. Ryota explains that he and Mirica will graduate after the next exam, so Kunen will take it with them. Kunen is taken to prepare, and Arson says something important to Ryota. There are other royalty at the school, and he fears they might try to approach Kunen and Mirica. Ryota tells his father not to fear, promising to take care of them. Afterward, Mirica is overjoyed to learn that Kunen is going. She can't wait to spend time with him, but Kunen admits he doesn't know what to expect. Mirica promises to guide him, but something bothers our hero. He points out that if she's with him, the boys who have crushes on her will be jealous. Mirica says that won't be a problem, so Kunen asks if it's because she's not popular. Mirica is offended and assures him that many boys like her. Kunen doesn't want trouble, so he thinks about buying a cane for defense. Eventually, we see that Kunen is all equipped for his new adventure. Aiko is silly seeing how elegant he looks, like a prince from a fairy tale. Kunen plays along and says his true identity has been revealed. He says goodbye to his family and uses Aori to put water on the carriage wheels. This is to keep the carriage from swaying, and Ryota is impressed with the smoothness. Magic is very practical, and Kunen is happy to have discovered how versatile it is. He hopes to even get a job in the future. Ryota is sure Kunen must be nervous about traveling so far, but Kunen says he's gotten a little stronger. He reveals he knows how much his brother worried about him. He also realizes that Ryota blamed himself when he fell that day. Kunen assures him he's fine, that a lot has changed. He used to wish he could disappear, but now he's determined to survive at any cost. Ryota is incredibly relieved, as Kunen has changed a lot since learning magic. Kunen continues, saying he has a drive to win, even if the rest of the world perishes. Kunen is getting radical, so Ryota wonders if his brother isn't exaggerating. Kunen doesn't stop, swearing to outlive everyone in a way that makes you feel sorry for the human race. Ryota never imagined Kunen like this, so he wonders if this is really his little brother. Then Ryota is surprised to see that Kunen realizes they're arriving at the school. You can't even see it from here. So Kunen explains he senses many people nearby. They arrive and are greeted by Mirica. Kunen, charming as always, asks if he can have half her day to say how happy he is to hear her voice so early. Mirica plays along and says his tie is adorable. Kunen agrees, but asks if it's more adorable than her. Mirica says no, and he's happy, because if it were, he would have ripped it off. The two go on like this for a while, and Ryota just wonders what's wrong with them. Mirica prepares to take them inside, but is surprised Kunen isn't following. Kunen has gone completely silent, listening to the voices of everyone at school. There are so many people inside, and the voices are endless. It's his first time in a public place with so many people, and he's sure his past self would have run away. But he's a different person now, so he walks in with confidence. Nearby, a teacher named Kess thinks it's almost time to receive her new student. It's Kunen, and she knows he's the noble with the hero's scar. She heard the rumor that he's very shy and wonders if a novice teacher like her can handle guiding him. Then some girls drool over a new student. They say he's incredibly charming, comparing him to a prince. They're talking about Kunen, so Kess can't believe this is the same boy they said was so shy. Kess introduces herself and explains she'll be Kunen's guide. He uses all his charm, leaving Kess unsure if the boy is real. The bell rings, and Kunen's group has to split up. They promise to meet at lunch, and Ryota asks Kess to take care of his brother. The group separates, and Kess feels that guiding Kunen will be a lot of work. Meanwhile, some students comment that Kunen, the one with the hero's scar, has finally arrived. Some heard he received blessings from the king for being the first with the scar in 100 years. This irritates their leader, so the boy brushes it off, saying Kunen doesn't seem like much. These students are terrified of Lyle and say the hero's scar must just be superstition. Lyle's hatred for Kunen is clear, and he sends his gang away. Afterward, Kess gives Kunen an overview of the exams. He already knows that if he passes the 5, he gets the certificate. But there's more. Kess explains that many students graduate in 3 to 5 years. The promotion exams are to review what the student studied in the last few months or year. If the student pays attention in class, it won't be difficult. But if they fail, they can only try again in a month. Kunen understands. Basically, if you pass, you can move on to the next, but if not, you have to wait a month. Kess explains that normally after an exam, there's time to prepare for the next. The exception is that Kunen's exams will be in a shorter period. He doesn't understand what she means by exception, so she explains she received orders from his parents. Kunen is annoyed, explaining that his father and the king are best friends. This is pure nepotism, so he apologizes for the pressure his father is putting on the school. This is above Kess's level, so she says she'll pretend she didn't hear that. She hands him the mock exam and doesn't stop talking. He points out that his father and the king are thick as thieves, friends from the previous generation. She really doesn't want any trouble, so she begs him to start the exam. Then she says she never expected him to be chatting the whole test. She corrects the test and is shocked to see he got everything right. He was distracted and talking the whole time. She doesn't understand how he did so well. Elsewhere, Kunen meets Mirica for lunch. They run into Lyle, and Mirica is visibly bothered. A crowd starts to form, and Kunen wonders what's wrong. He feels the tension rising and wonders who this guy is. The crowd grows, and Ryota arrives, seeing something's happening. Turns out Lyle is the prince, and he wonders if the bun in front of him really received a blessing from his father. Lyle is also Mirica's brother, so she begs him to stop, but he tells her not to interfere. Kunen, for his part, is annoyed because he was having fun with Mirica. He doesn't care who Lyle is. If he's bothering Mirica and getting in the way, he's the enemy. Kunen prepares to handle it, but Ryota arrives before things escalate. He asks what's happening, but Lyle is furious. He calls Ryota disrespectful for not having permission to speak. Lyle's gang starts to attack, and Ryota can't believe royalty is already approaching Kunen on the first day. Then Kunen quietly says the spell word, allowing him to control all the water in the area without anyone noticing. He uses his immense power to put water in Lyle's pants. Ryota realizes there's no arguing with Lyle, but it's fine because Kunen already handled it. Kunen says it looks like Lyle peed his pants, and Lyle is shocked to see it's all wet. He tries to deny it, but it's too late. The damage is done. Everyone thinks he soiled himself, but Kunen's friends know it was him. No one else knows. So Lyle runs off, totally embarrassed. Kunen is satisfied to be rid of that nuisance and says it's time to eat. Ryota isn't so happy because he's sure Kunen caused the attack. Kunen ignores the fact and says he's craving something. While they eat, Mirica explains that Lyle is her brother. Kunen is horrified because he can't imagine an older brother who doesn't care for his siblings. Unfortunately, his friends explain that they exist, so Kunen says he's glad Ryota is his brother. Ryota feels the same and thinks about how Kunen has changed. He was always shy, but now he's standing up to the prince. The prince is practically untouchable, and Ryota doesn't know how to explain this to his father. Mirica says this is just how Kunen is now, so they shouldn't worry and just enjoy the meal. Kunen doesn't think about it anymore and just wants to talk about how delicious the hamburger is. Ryota can't help himself and hopes they can graduate without more problems. Unfortunately for him, that probably won't be the case, as we see that Lyle is furious about what happened. Lyle is embarrassed and notices how everyone comments on him peeing his pants. Even when Kes asks him to walk quietly in the hallway, Lyle tells her to shut up. Kes wonders why Lyle was so rude, so Mirica supposes it's because he wants to keep her under control. Lyle is the 6th prince, and Mirica is the 9th princess. In the royal hierarchy, she's below him. But Lyle still feels threatened. Mirica is engaged to Kunen, a sorcerer and the hero of the scar. The engagement is important, so Mirica's status is rising quickly. Kunen has just entered society, so their status together will be above Lyle's. Mirica doesn't want Kunen to misunderstand, so she assures him she doesn't care about her status in high society. Even if her father hadn't ordered it, she'd still be happy to marry him. Kunen uses his charm again, saying he feels the same. He couldn't be happier and might even kneel before the king in gratitude next time they meet. Kunen says he'd like to apologize to Lyle, but the others won't allow it. Time passes, and the day comes for Kunen to take the final exam. He uses Iori, and Jenny says today's alteration will be for Kunen to try to change the feeling of the water. Kunen does it immediately, and Jenny is impressed to see the orb now looks like an apple. She instructs him to touch other things during the day to try to express his sensations. Afterward, Ryota asks what Kunen is doing petting a horse, and he explains he's collecting samples for alterations. Mirica arrives shortly after, and Kunen declares how terrible he feels. Today is his last day hearing her voice at school, and it seems the world is fading into twilight from so much sadness. Kunen starts getting even more dramatic, but Mirica reminds him that school only ends later. Kunen changes his mind immediately and says he's not sad anymore. Ryota can't help but think the two are crazy. Afterward, Kes explains that Kunen will take the final exam with the other students. Kunen is amazed because it seems like a real school, but he says it's a shame not to stay in the special room with Kes. She assures him she'll still be keeping an eye on him, even with more students, and wishes him luck. Ryota notices how close they are, so Kunen explains they talked a lot during the exams. Kunen even learned that Kes became a teacher after following a guy she fell in love with. The guy unfortunately failed the test, so only she became a teacher. That's a lot of personal information, so the others can't believe Kes discussed all that with Kunen. The other students ask Mirica if she'd introduce her fiancé. Kes says he should introduce himself, so Kunen prepares. He steps into the theater once more and tells everyone it's a pleasure to meet them. Kunen introduces himself formally, and everyone listens attentively. Kunen doesn't stop there, saying he's relieved. He was starting to think Mirica and his brother didn't have any friends because no one approached or talked to them. Ryota and Mirica are offended, so Mirica reveals she told everyone to leave them alone. It was a rare opportunity to enjoy school life with Kunen, so she didn't want to be bothered. Kunen didn't know that, and is happy to see his brother isn't lonely, and that Mirica really has friends. It's a huge relief for him not to have to make them feel better by reminding them how bad their situation is. Kunen says it anyway, mentioning he had no friends in childhood, and Mirica feels sorry for him. That doesn't last long because she remembers that Kunen is totally fine without friends. Kunen ends the dramatic scene by confirming this, pointing out that humans get along surprisingly well alone. Nearby, Lyle is reminded that it's time for the exam. Lyle declares he can wait, but his henchmen say it can't be ignored. The final exam will be taken by everyone at once, and not even the prince can be late. Meanwhile, Kunen collects more samples by petting a bird, and the students are called to their seats. Mirica wants Kunen to sit next to her, but everyone is horrified when the furious Lyle appears. Everyone tenses, imagining what he'll do. Lyle thinks about how much he hates all of them. They never say anything to his face and always talk behind his back. This even applies to the castle, as the maids always comment that he causes trouble at school. His anger rises the more he thinks, but he's shocked when Kunen introduces himself politely. The whole room is incredulous at how Kunen casually walked up to Lyle and fears he might lose his life. Kunen keeps his cheerful attitude, saying he's glad for the chance to say hello. Lyle gets even more irritated, but Kunen reminds him they'll be future brothers-in-law, so they should try to get along. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. As Lyle points out, he never gave Kunen permission to speak or hold his hand. Kunen notices from Lyle's firm hand how serious he is and is impressed. Kunen gives a compliment, saying he's sure Lyle is a great leader and that he'd like to have eyes so he could see him. Lyle is weirded out and can only ask Mirica what's wrong with him. Everyone has a good laugh, and Mirica apologizes because she never knew Lyle could be so confused and blushing like he is now. After everyone takes an exam, Cass says she'll announce the names of those who passed. Everyone watches intently to see if she writes the names on the board, but the lady draws a giant flower. That's because everyone passed, so the whole class celebrates. They congratulate each other, and Mirica is overjoyed to graduate with Kunen. Kunen goes home shortly after and thanks everyone for making his experience so much fun. Kes is very proud of him, because although he's a bit peculiar, he's also a very bright student. Lyle watches him leave, and we notice he's much more cheerful. He tells his group it's time to go, and they all promise to follow the prince wherever he goes. Shortly after, Jenny helps Kunen train again. She shouts out different alterations to the Aori spell, and Kunen executes them immediately. Jenny asks for a whirlpool, so Kunen makes the water sphere spin. Jenny then orders him to stop suddenly and split it into 10. Kunen does exactly that. Jenny can't believe he can do it all, so she ups the level. She asks him to change the color, and he changes it to the exact shade she requested. Finally, she asks him to change the texture, and he does it too. Jenny is satisfied with the performance, but Kunen isn't finished. He says he can do more and shocks Jenny by transforming the lance into a bird. It's not just the shape. The bird can even fly away. Jenny's world starts to crumble because Kunen has exceeded all her expectations. He does things she never even imagined, so she says she's done. Afterward, Jenny asks to speak with Kunen. He thinks it's about the graduation dinner, but that's not it. Jenny reveals she needs to tell him the truth, but wants to make sure he's mentally prepared first. She's going to reveal something shocking, so Kunen dismisses his companion. He thinks he knows what she's going to say, but it's all too sudden. He supposes she'll reveal she's the goddess of the night sky, and needs to return to the world of the gods. Jenny praises his fertile imagination, but that's not even close to the truth. She stops wasting time and reveals that she actually has nothing left to teach him. The fact is, it's been a while since she's had anything to teach. She covered basic elementary magic without attacks, and taught everything she could at that level. Now he uses magic better than she does, and as soon as he learns something new, he'll quickly surpass her. Kunen says that's not true, because he enjoyed the challenges she invented to try to trick him in every way. She always created new ways to challenge him, which expanded his range of magic. Jenny was also the one who inspired him and gave purpose to his life. She admits it was hard to create the challenges, and she often had trouble coming up with a new one. Kunen refuses to believe she has nothing more to offer, so he thinks there must be another reason. He asks if she wants to leave because the pay is low and says he can ask his father. Jenny reveals it's the opposite. It's unbearable to receive so much without having a job to do. She's reached her limit and thinks Kunen deserves someone better. She says he should have an exceptional mage, much better than her, as a teacher. She can no longer help him improve or guide him. Kunen knows that she only put together lessons with small challenges, but he says that's still a talent. She created so many, and all were very useful. Kunen doesn't want her to leave, so he asks her to keep deceiving him. He desperately wants her to continue being his teacher, so he demands she continue with the lies. As Kunen makes his plea, several animals created with the Aori spell start to appear. They surround Jenny, but she insists she can't teach him anymore. Kunen's magic is far more advanced than hers, and she's doing what's best for him. The two argue for a while, but in the end, Jenny decides she has to go. As she leaves, she can't stop thinking about what an undeniable genius Kunen is. He has unlimited potential, and what it takes to become a Cerulean mage. Even with divine talents, Kunen went through infinite trial and error, challenging himself to surpass everything. Jenny is inspired by his work ethic and decides to work hard too. She says she can't lose to her own student, so she wants to visit her master to continue learning. Later, Kunen is shocked to learn that Flora also resigned. He finished the curriculum and graduated from school, so Flora had nothing left to teach. Flora said she couldn't hold back the tears, so she didn't say goodbye in person. Kunen says he'll write a letter, so Aiko makes a request. She wants him to ask Flora if there are any men in her mansion to introduce to her, since she's still looking for a husband. Kunen can't believe she also wants to leave, but Aiko assures him he'll be fine on his own now. He points out that everyone is leaving and fears dying of loneliness. He really doesn't want Aiko to go, so he refuses to ask about the tall, handsome man she's looking for. That night, Kunen tells his father what Jenny said about finding an exceptional mage. Luckily, Ryota has a suggestion, as he heard a rumor at school about an extraordinary royal mage. Arson tries to interrupt, but Ryota continues. He says the guy's name sounded like Z, and their mother has heard of him. His name is Zion Lee, known for being a mage of immense power and beauty. Kunen wonders if he'd accept being his teacher, but Arson tells him to calm down. He says it's impossible to invite a royal mage, but Kunen doesn't understand why. Kunen reminds his father that he has connections since he's the king's best friend. Arson just wonders where his son learned to talk like that and concludes it must be Mirica's influence. Arson explains how impossible it would be to have the royal mage as a teacher. They're under the king's direct command. and no one can order them around except the monarch himself. They rarely leave the castle, and contact is restricted. Meeting Zion in person would be difficult, and getting him to come to their house is impossible. Arsene hopes Kunen will give up on the idea, but he's wrong. Kunen has an idea and says he should accompany Arsene on his next visit to the castle. He imagines a scenario where he gets lost and the royal mages come to help him. He thinks that will lead to him becoming their apprentice. Arsene can't believe how flawed this plan is. Kunen assures his father his plan has a 90% chance of success. Arsene highly doubts that. Arsene points out the flaws in the terrible plan, but Kunen asks his mother, and she thinks it's a great idea. She helps Kunen convince Arsene, so he agrees to ask the king. Kunen is very grateful, but Arsene reminds him not to get his hopes up. Elsewhere, a Grand Master is informed about Kunen and his request. He's an apprentice mage asking to study with the royal mage, which is unprecedented. Power and status mean nothing to the royal mages, and they don't care about a noble's closeness to the king. The Grand Master read Kunen's profile and seems interested in our hero. Shortly after, Arsene is surprised because the royal mage agreed to meet Kunen. If all goes well, the king will even consider Kunen's request to have a royal tutor. Kunen says this is the true power of nepotism. Arsene explains that wasn't the case. The royal mages were simply interested in Kunen. Arsene wants to see what kind of magic he's been practicing, so Kunen shows him. Kunen's magic has leveled up, and he shows Arsene that he can create a realistic-looking cat with his Iori spell. Arsene can't believe it's made of water, but it gets even more impressive. Kunen is learning to make the movements look super realistic and is also studying to make the cat's meows sound real. When they arrive, they're greeted by Lady Risha. Kunen uses his charm to introduce himself and finds out she's Mirica's sister. Risha has heard a lot about Kunen through Mirica, but she never mentioned he had a cat. Kunen surprises her by revealing it's not real and that he made it using magic. Risha didn't notice anything and concludes that Kunen is much more skilled than she heard. Risha prepares to take Kunen to the Black Tower, so Arsene says he'll go speak with the king. Kunen says he'll return home alone, especially since he wants to spend time with Mirica. Arsene says he'll arrange a carriage and tells Kunen to have fun. While Risha takes Kunen to the Black Tower, she reveals she wants to discuss something with him. Kunen assumes it has to do with the rich history of mages, but that's not it. He wonders if it's about the new interpretation of composite magic, but also, no. Kunen is sure it must be about the new theory of three-dimensional and oblique magic circles, but Risha explains it's not a high-level conversation. Instead, she reveals it has to do with his family. Among them, there are 7 princes and 10 princesses. In most countries, the throne goes to the first prince, but in Julia, they tend toward meritocracy. So depending on achievement, the order of birth can be altered. Risha is nothing like her brothers, as she renounced her right to the throne to be a mage. At that moment, Kunen is frightened to feel several amazing magical powers coming from the Black Tower. It's almost terrifying, so Kunen can only wonder what kind of mages are there. Risha continues, saying Mirica is worried that Kunen might be dragged into the succession issue. Then Risha is shocked to see Kunen sliding around. She has no idea what's happening, so Kunen explains he created a very thin layer of water on his shoes and froze it. This allows him to slide on the floor easily and is much faster than just walking. Kunen says she can try if she wants, and Risha couldn't be more excited. She holds back though, because she needs to finish what she was saying earlier. She hurries, saying Kunen shouldn't affiliate with any faction without thinking. More importantly, he shouldn't sign or say anything that could be used against him. With that settled, she tells Kunen she's ready to skate. He puts ice on her shoes too, and the two start skating all over the place. The guards fear it's dangerous and try to stop them, but the two are too fast to be caught. However, a guy named Dario appears and is furious. Kunen points out an angry guy is shouting for them to stop, but Risha doesn't care. She just says they need to go faster, but Dario eventually catches them. Nearby, Arsene wonders about all the commotion around the castle. A butler explains that a child mage was being mischievous and was caught by a knight. Later, Kunen meets with the Grand Master of the Royal Mages named Mond. Kunen introduces himself, but is very restless. He thought Risha's magic was impressive, but this Mond is on a completely different level. Mond heard that Kunen has a water crest, so he explains it's on his left shoulder. Mond takes a look and notes it's a 2-star crest. Kunen has no idea what that means, so Mond explains there are 7 types of crests that mages are born with: fire, water, earth, wind, light, darkness, and bird. Each crest has 5 levels indicated by stars. Kunen's crest only has 2 stars, meaning it's the second from the bottom. 2 stars are the most common, and Risha says she has a 2-star wind crest. Kunen realizes that Mond is different because the density of his magical power is completely distinct from theirs. Mond is impressed that Kunen noticed that, but he's not done. He says if Kunen's 2-star crest is like common cheese, Mond's is like premium blue cheese. Kunen calls him Grandmaster Blue Cheese and assumes Mond's crest is 3 stars. Mond reveals it's actually 4 stars, but he's surprised when Kunen doesn't seem impressed. Kunen explains it's his first time hearing about crests, so the magnitude hasn't sunk in yet. He wonders if the different levels influence the magic someone can produce. Unfortunately, the categorization isn't that clear, and the only clear distinction they know is the total amount of magical power. Mond says it's not important now, because what matters is what Kunen will learn from here on, and how dedicated he is. Mond says it's time for the fun to begin, so they go outside for a test. Risha has already seen what Kunen can do, so she assures Mond that Kunen is very skilled. The other mages recognize Kunen as the hero's scar, and are interested in seeing what kind of magic he can use. Kunen prepares for whatever the test is, and wonders if passing will mean he'll have a royal mage as a teacher. He's eager to start, so Mond calls someone named Victor. Victor uses the Yori spell to create several water spheres. Kunen is amazed, and Mond asks if he can take control of Victor's spell with his own. Kunen has never heard of taking control of someone else's magic, and remembers his lessons with Jenny. She showed him the Aori spell for the first time, and explained it was magic to produce and manipulate water. More importantly, she said it would allow him to control water that was already there. Now he thinks about how he's controlled water many times before. But manipulating water that another mage created is something he's never heard of. This is something neither he nor Jenny could have imagined. But he's still eager to see if he can do it. Kunen uses Iori. Victor is stunned as the spheres start to move. Victor regains control, and Kunen is caught off guard because he's never experienced water that resisted his control. Everyone watches intently as the two mages battle for control of the spheres. It's a great struggle for our hero, but he orders the water to come to him, and the spheres start to separate. It looks like Kunen is going to win, but Mond declares out loud that that's enough. Our hero is completely exhausted from the duel, so he collapses to the ground. He only managed to pull 2 spheres, so he's impressed with how skilled the mage really is. He's surprised, though, when Mond says he did a great job. Victor thought Kunen would have no chance, but now he's totally convinced. He sees Kunen's potential, so he says he'd like to teach him. All the other royal mages start arguing, so Mond is surprised to see that everyone wants Kunen as their disciple. He wonders if this means he passed the test, but Mond says there's more to do. The rest of the test is a bit different, however, as Mond uses Kunen's water as a trampoline. Mond can only wonder how this water works. Kunen explains it's his super soft Iori. He wrapped the water in a super soft, stretchy membrane, which makes it very bouncy. The others assume it would make a great bed, and could even absorb the impact of a fall. Mond hasn't had this much fun during a test in a long time, but Kunen isn't done. He says if he increases the elasticity, Mond will be able to jump so high that he'll easily reach the 2nd floor of the castle. All the mages would love to see that, but Mond says that's enough. If Kunen showed more magic, they'd keep asking, and he wouldn't be able to go home. Risha points out that Kunen can make animals with his water. She heard he made a cat earlier, so she wonders if he can even make humans. Kunen shockingly reveals that he can, so he makes a clone of Aiko. Unfortunately, just like with the animals, the movements of these humans are still imperfect. Victor is curious and wonders if that means Kunen can make them move in ways humans can't. Kunen confirms, explaining he made it fly earlier. It was really weird to watch and wasn't well received. The mages, on the other hand, are eager to see it, so Kunen gives them what they want. He sends his human water doll into the air, but this terrifies everyone when they think someone jumped out the window. Other people are also frightened, so the mages have to apologize to everyone for the commotion. Kunen thinks about how he's been scolded twice today, but Mond tells him not to worry about it. He says they should talk about magic over lunch next time, so Kunen wonders if that means he passed. Mond confirms and says he'll personally take care of assigning a mage to be Kunen's teacher. Kunen couldn't be more excited, but he remembers Risha's warning. He wonders if this would be considered taking a side in a faction, but she says it's fine. Power and status mean nothing to the royal mages, and this won't affect anything she mentioned before. Mond would like to know if Kunen has any future goals, so Kunen reveals he wants to create eyeballs with magic. The mages are very intrigued and wonder if Kunen will really be able to do that. Afterward, Kunen is worried because his father is clearly upset. Arson had to hear about Kunen's bad reputation twice today, so he wants answers. Kunen apologizes, and Risha explains it wasn't his fault because everyone got carried away. Arson understands, but also reminds him that very bad things can happen when mages just do things when they're told. Magic is power, so Kunen must refuse to do anything that causes harm to others. Arson reminds Kunen that he's responsible for his own powers, so Kunen apologizes again. Arson leaves and can't stop thinking about how everyone seemed to like Kunen. At that moment, Kunen realizes it's getting quite late. He has a dinner with Mirica, and it would be rude to arrive all sweaty and out of breath after running to the date. Risha agrees and says they should combine their powers to solve this problem. She has Kunen use Iori to create a sphere, and says she'll use her wind magic to make it fly. Kunen is impressed, but there's a problem. He promised himself that the first time he flew or floated alone with someone would be with Mirica. Kunen is sure Risha's fiancée wouldn't like this either, but she doesn't care. She pulls Kunen onto the sphere and reveals she doesn't have a fiancé. Kunen realizes there's no way to fight this, so the two fly away. Risha uses her wind magic, and they take off in the blink of an eye. Kunen wonders if they're going too fast, but Risha says they need to go faster. They eventually arrive, but they lose focus and start to fall. Luckily, the landing isn't too bad, and both are grateful that Kunen's water sphere is very soft. Unfortunately, Dario saw everything, so he points out that Kunen did something dangerous again. Inside, Mirica wonders if Kunen will help her dress. Her maid has never seen Mirica act like this over a boy, so she wonders what kind of person Kunen is. Outside, we see Kunen is a bit of a troublemaker, being scolded by Dario for the third time today. Mirica is nervous about the date and paces back and forth in the room. She's told that Kunen has arrived, so she runs to the door. Kunen is charming as always and says he's looking forward to their first night together. Mirica's maid looks at him and sees the boy who's captured her heart. At dinner, Kunen toasts to Mirica's beautiful eyes, and the maid is impressed with his gentlemanly ways. Kunen tells her about his day and how he met Grand Master Blue Cheese. He also passed the evaluation test and now hopes to find out who his teacher will be. Kunen showers Mirica with exquisite compliments, exuding charm. He comments on the food, and the maid wonders if it's a metaphor. She fears Kunen is crossing the line, but notices Mirica seems very happy. Risha interrupts and apologizes, as dinner is the best he can do for now. However, he says that when they marry, they'll spend days like this together. He declares he can't wait for the future with her, and the maid is silly with his smooth talk. Mirica is in love and also looks forward to the future. That night she blushes after the date, and the maid has to remind her that she needs to sleep. Time passes, and Aiko asks Kunen for help. Kunen uses his Arubu spell to create several spheres, as they make laundry much easier. Kunen explains he was busy writing a report, but that upsets Aiko. She points out he's been locked in his room since returning from the castle, and demands to know why. Kunen explains he learned some things there and wanted to write them down before forgetting. Aiko reminds him that going out and getting sunlight is one of the important tasks of a child. She says it's vital for growth, so Kunen remembers that girls like tall guys. Aiko agrees, but assures him she'd like him whether he's tall or short. Kunen almost says he feels the same but holds back, as it would be rude to Mirica. Aiko can't believe he talks like that now and calls him a conqueror. Then Kunen is disappointed to learn he still hasn't received the letter. He's waiting for it because it will reveal who his teacher will be. At the tower, Victor looks for Zion Lee, but he doesn't answer. Victor finds him in his room, and Zion reminds him he should never dare interrupt his precious sleep. Victor apologizes and explains the Grand Master is calling him. Zion was irritated, but the news gets his attention. Back to our hero, he proudly announces that his new teacher has been assigned. Aiko wants to know who it is, so he reveals it's someone named Zion Lee. Aiko is shocked. As they say, Zion Lee is a magnificently beautiful sorcerer. Every woman knows who he is, so Aiko panics. He's coming to their house, so she says she needs a new maid uniform. Kunen wonders if he should let another guy meet Aiko, but she says there's no time to talk. She needs to do her nails and, more importantly, wants to lose weight. Aiko runs off to get ready, leaving Kunen completely confused. At the castle, Risha explains to Mirica that a royal sorcerer needs a direct order from royalty to leave. Zion has to see Kunen, so Mirica will order him to protect her while she visits him. Risha can't believe Zion was chosen because she wanted Kunen as her student. At that moment, some of Mirica's sisters appear. They've heard that Mirica's fiancé has a reputation, but their intentions are clearly not pure. Risha says it's none of their business and tells them to get out of the way. Back to Kunen. He wonders what Zion Lee is like. Mirica arrives shortly after, and he's caught off guard. Kunen explains he mentally prepares himself every time he sees her, so seeing her unexpectedly made him nervous about her incredible beauty. Kunen continues to exude charm, but we see that Zion has heard enough. He steps out of the carriage, and Kunen immediately goes silent. He feels Zion's incredible presence, and the tension rises. The situation is broken by Aiko, who laughs nervously. Kunen observes the sorcerer and notes that his magical power is incredibly dense. The viscosity is hard to describe, and Kunen compares it to honey. He's never felt anything like it before. It's a completely different type of magical power from Grand Master Blue Cheese. Kunen thinks about how this guy is more proficient in magic than any royal sorcerer he's met. Kunen admires him as a sorcerer, so he introduces himself formally. He says he'd like to call him Professor Honey, but Zion tells him to get lost. Zion orders him to call him Master Zion and says he hates brats. Zion reveals he didn't accept the position as Kunen's magic teacher and doesn't even want to be there. The Grand Master just said there was an interesting brat he should meet, so that's why he's here. Dario is also here and says his job is to protect Mirica and Zion. Kunen wonders if Zion is as Aiko imagined, and she says yes. Kunen explains he doesn't really understand what it means to be cool. But from what he's heard, Zion must be amazing. Zion gets furious, thinking Kunen is mocking him, but Kunen assures him he's not. Zion doesn't know what to think of this kid, so he decides he's a bit strange. Kunen assumes Mirica only came to bring Zion, but she assures him she also wanted to visit. The charming Kunen doesn't let it slide and says he feels the same. Zion is tired of hearing them talk like that and reminds them he's still here. He wants Kunen to have a fun conversation about magic, so Kunen happily accepts. Dario sees the look on Zion's face and realizes he just wants to pick on Kunen. Zion starts by asking what Kunen knows about compound spells. Kunen explains that spells are released from a magic circle drawn with magical power. Compound spells are created by splitting and rearranging magic circles. Zion asks how many sections he can manipulate, so Kunen reveals he can do 31. Zion didn't expect that answer, and Kunen says he can reach 32 but sometimes fails. Zion says that's not bad and that he can reach 50. Kunen is stunned, but Zion just wants to know how Kunen overcame the obstacle of 22 sections. It's notoriously difficult, so Kunen reveals he overlapped crests. Zion is impressed to learn that Kunen figured that out on his own, and Kunen explains he used several tricks. Zion didn't expect any of this, but now it all makes sense. The other royal sorcerers wanted to be Kunen's teachers, and now Zion knows why. They were upset because an excellent student like Kunen doesn't come around often. Zion now realizes they were invested in Kunen because he's an exceptional talent. Zion finishes the questions and tells Kunen to show him what he can do. Kunen wants Zion to show him how to make 50 sections first, but Zion refuses. He says it would be useless to teach someone who can't do it, and he won't waste his time. He tells Kunen to prove what he knows and ask for instruction fairly by being a good sucker. Mirica is sure Kunen would never agree to that, but she's very wrong. Kunen really wants to learn from the best royal sorcerer, so he asks Zion to teach him. He pours on compliments repeatedly because he really wants to learn how to make 50 sections. Zion has heard enough and tells Kunen not to call him Master Zion yet because he hasn't recognized him. He agrees, however, to show Kunen how amazing he is. Zion reveals he has a 3-star Earth crest and uses his power to summon a wall. He instructs Kunen to try to destroy it with magic, otherwise he'll give up on him as a student. Before trying, Zion says he'd like to see the waterbed he's heard so much about. Kunen creates it, so Zion announces he'll watch while resting and tells Kunen to do his best. The moment Zion touches the bed, he's overcome with extreme comfort. It's like a feather pillow, and he falls asleep the second he lies down. Kunen touches the wall and notes it's very hard, but also smooth. What stands out most, however, is that the density of magical power is incredible. At this moment, Kunen thinks about the basics Jenny taught him. Magic is a crest, and a crest means a magic circle. The caster creates several spells by rearranging different magic circles, and these circles become the basis of each spell. Compound magic refers to the number of times the base magic circle has been split and rebuilt, which is the essence of magic. This number shows the level of magic in the alterations. As for this wall, Kunen determines it's a crystal of compound magic with over 40 sections. That's incredible, and he just wonders how someone can increase the sections so much. Risha and Mirica are shocked when Kunen says they should talk. Kunen wants to wait for Zion to wake up, but Mirica wonders if that's a good idea. She reminds Kunen that he'll fail if he doesn't break the wall, but Kunen reveals he can destroy it whenever he wants. Time passes, and Zion wakes up. He's told he slept for 2 hours. He sees Kunen relaxing and assumes he gave up on destroying the wall. Kunen is more confident than ever and asks if Zion is ready to see him break it. Zion says to go ahead, so Kunen uses his Arubu spell. This makes small water spheres form on the wall. Eiko notices it's the same spell Kunen used in the laundry room. Kunen explains that this wall is made of earth, which becomes extremely fragile when it absorbs water beyond its capacity. Zion is very impressed, but wonders why Kunen used the Arubu spell when his specialty is the Aori spell. Kunen's answer is simple. He only did it because it was easier. Zion is amazed once again because instead of using force, Kunen saw the wall as earth and chose simply to wash it away. Kunen explains that certain spells are compatible with certain situations and subjects, and a sorcerer's job is to see that. Kunen takes it as a compliment and wonders if this means Zion will teach him. Zion reminds him that he'll be the one to make that decision and confirms that Kunen will be his student from today on. He tells Kunen he's the luckiest boy in the world, and Kunen agrees. He says he not only found his teacher today, but also had Mirica by his side. Zion gets annoyed again and reminds Kunen that his teacher is more important than his fiancée. Now that Kunen is his student, there's a lot to do. Zion has a million things to teach, and he'll even help him with his experiments. Zion just wonders what Mirica will do, and she's caught off guard. He explains that Kunen will improve a lot and rise in life, so women will swarm around him to fight for him. Mirica can't deny that, because Kunen has already grown so much to become a student of a royal sorcerer. He's rising quickly, and she's still just a low-status princess. Mirica is very down and knows that if she doesn't do something, there'll be no future where she's with Kunen. Mirica starts shaking nervously, so Kunen tells Zion not to be mean to her. Kunen realizes that Zion likes to be mean to girls and is the type who realizes too late. Kunen really turns the tables on this guy by saying he's the type who's mean to the girl he likes just to see her stolen from under his nose. Kunen really hits him where it hurts, so Zion says enough. Kunen wonders if he said something wrong to Professor Honey, but Zion just says not to call him that. That night, Mirica thinks about how Zion was right, so she's determined to do something. Time passes, and Kunen's training is about to begin. He says he'll accept any kind of hard training. Zion tells him to prepare, but he's shocked when Kunen starts trying to guess what they'll do. Kunen wonders if they'll start with three-dimensional circles or oblique magic circles. If it were up to Kunen, he'd start by teaching the 50-section compound spell. Unfortunately, Zion starts the training by making Kunen make clean copies of all the paperwork he has. There are many secrets in these files, so Zion tells the others to wait outside. He then has Kunen create his water sphere so he can take a nap while Kunen finishes the work. Outside, Mirica reveals to Risha that she's been training with a sword. She's just started, and there's still a lot to learn. She's been using every second of her free time to train, and has been careful not to tell Kunen anything. Mirica fights against Dario, and is determined to become someone worthy of Kunen. After a few hours, Zion wakes up and wonders if Kunen is done. Kunen is only halfway, so Zion says he's too slow. Kunen says there's no help for it, and explains it's because he's exhausted from trying to decipher Zion's terrible handwriting. His letters look like a bunch of worms trying to fight each other, so Kunen says he'll have to charge for all this hard work. Zion reminds him that this is training, and explains that information and knowledge are two different things. What you gain from reading is information, and what you analyze in your head is knowledge. Your body remembers this knowledge, and that knowledge becomes power. Kunen is inspired again, so he promises never to doubt Zion again. Before Kunen leaves, he mentions he saw a diagram in one of the memos. He wonders if it's some kind of spell, but Zion doesn't tell him what it is. Instead, he says it would be easier to show, but Kunen will have to wait until the next training mission. Kunen looks forward to that and takes a moment to say goodbye to Mirica. Later, the other sorcerers point out that Kunen has gotten much taller. Kunen explains it's natural because he's now 10 years old. He's gone through a growth spurt, and the others recognize that his magical power has also gotten a little stronger. Victor wants to battle Kunen again, but Risha says Kunen promised to do a flying experiment with her. They argue for his attention, but Zion arrives to say it's time to train. They try to stop him, but Zion has Kunen create more of his water pillows to put everyone to sleep. Their lesson begins when Zion reminds Kunen that magical tools work with the sorcerer's magical power. Magic engineers are sorcerers who make a living creating magical tools. Zion takes Kunen to his room, and Kunen is amazed because there are even more memos here than in his office. It's a bunch of scribbles, but also a bunch of magic spells Kunen has never seen before. There are so many great things that Kunen would like to live here, but Zion says that won't be necessary. He explains that eventually Kunen will have all of this, and Kunen can't wait. Zion shows him the magical tool he's developing now, and reveals it was part of the diagram Kunen saw before. Zion explains that when it's ready, it will allow its user to have a hot meal in their room without ever having to go to the kitchen. Zion says his earth magic is good for shaping forms, but fine details and soft parts aren't easy. That's making it hard to complete the tool, so Kunen realizes Zion wants him to help with his water magic. Zion is impressed with Kunen's deductive skills, so he explains that eventually Kunen will help him with his work. The two will be more efficient together and can double their experiments. At that moment, the Grand Master arrives, ready to discuss the essence of magic with Kunen. Zion only sees him as a nuisance, so he tells Kunen to create his water pillow to put him to sleep. As for their project, Zion says his earth magic can take care of reinforcing the external structure. However, they'll have to rely on Kunen's water magic to create the small internal mechanism. When they take a break for lunch, the other sorcerers tell Kunen that he can replace his teacher whenever he wants. Kunen admits Zion makes him work hard, but he wouldn't want it any other way. Kunen wonders where Mirica is, so Risha explains she's at the entrance ceremony for the higher school for nobles. Her higher education is starting now, so the Grand Master wonders what Kunen will do next. Kunen plans to take the graduation exam, but the Grand Master was talking about magic school. It's a school where brilliant sorcerers from all over the world come to learn. All the royal sorcerers at the castle are graduates of the magic school, so the Grand Master thinks Kunen should go there too. You need to be 12 or older to enroll, so Kunen still has some time to decide. 2 years pass in the blink of an eye, and Kunen uses Aori in front of everyone. Zion uses his own spell to attack Kunen, but we see that Kunen has learned to use compound spells with over 50 sections. He uses one with 55 sections, creating a giant wall of water out of nowhere. Kunen uses a wave to block Zion's attack, and everyone is amazed. Afterward, we see that the magical tool they've been working on is complete. They use it to make a pie, and Kunen explains to Mirica that the tool has become quite popular. Many people are buying it, and Kunen made sure a good amount of money is going into Zion's pocket. Kunen thinks he should at least be paid for his work, but Zion points out that he allowed Kunen to do experiments that money could never buy. Later, Mirica finds out that the two collaborated on a total of 7 magical tools. They worked hard and even wrote 5 papers on new magical theories. They also made a manual for magical experiments and are working on another magical tool. Risha interrupts, surprised when Zion says he can do the rest alone. Kunen points out they're developing a box that attracts a bunch of insects, and Zion will need his help. Zion reminds Kunen that he'll turn 12 this spring, so he'll have to prepare to go to magic school. Kunen says he doesn't want to go and doesn't need to. He believes Zion is the best teacher, so he wants to continue learning magic by his side. Unfortunately, Zion points out that Kunen has finished making copies of his memos and magical tool blueprints. The work is done, but Kunen says he still has a lot to learn. He refuses once more, since Zion uses earth magic and can't teach water magic. Kunen wants to stay, but Risha says there might be an extraordinary water master at the school. There might be a 3-star one, or if Kunen is lucky, maybe even a 4-star. Kunen hesitates, but Mirica agrees with Zion. She thinks he should go and become the greatest sorcerer. She promises to wait for him and become someone worthy of his love. Kunen is inspired and decides to go. Before Zion leaves, Kunen wonders what he'll need to take to school. Zion says he already has what he needs, so Kunen thinks he means his sense of humor. That's not it, and Zion surprises him. What he'll need most are his eyes. Kunen can't believe he forgot his goal and runs to his room. Zion was right. He forgot his greatest ambition, the most important purpose for which he lives. He forgot why he learned to do so many things without seeing. Kunen calls himself a fool because his ultimate goal is to create new eyeballs. As Mirica leaves, she cries. Zion praises her for staying calm in front of her boyfriend, but she tells him to shut up. She thinks about how in the past 2 years Kunen has built his trajectory as a sorcerer. If he gains sight through magic, he'll go down in history as the first to succeed. Mirica fears being left behind and feels terrible for thinking like that. There's a part of her that wishes Kunen would never see, so he would stay by her side. Zion agrees that she's terrible, but Dario is much more understanding. He says there's light and darkness in everyone's heart, and the goal is not to be swallowed by either, to choose the right path. He reminds her that she's trained body and mind. Zion says Dario is too lenient with his student, but Dario says Zion is too strict. Zion was hard on Kunen and now just abandoned him. Zion lists the magics he taught and says he'll be fine. Unfortunately, he's never heard of anyone creating eyes with magic, so success depends solely on Kunen. Zion trusts that Kunen will succeed because he's his proudest student. Back to Kunen, he starts working. He uses Iori to create a water sphere and remembers the lessons. Zion said that an insect's eye is a cluster of 10,000 mirrors. Kunen experiments with his Arubu spell and a water circle, but it's not what he's looking for. After hours, Kunen is disappointed not to find the answer. Unable to sleep, he invites his brother to the sauna. Ryota says they should call their father, so they go wake him up. Arson wants their mother to come too, so the whole family goes. Kunen explains he's stuck on an experiment, the biggest one of all, about the eyes he's trying to create. Kunen isn't even close, so the family says they'll be there if he needs a break. Afterward, Kunen thinks about his family's support. They're always there, and he wants to see their faces. He wonders what they're like and says he wants to see what they see. Later, Kunen resumes the experiment. He creates the water circle and uses Arubu to cover it. He explains that the core is the water mirror, and he applied a special pattern to the surface. Thus, the pattern reads the vision and sends it to the mind. The spell becomes complex, and when finished, it's complete. Kunen finally tries and marvels at seeing for the first time in his life. He's completed his mission and can't stop crying. He's emotional seeing the wonderful world he's waited for. This is the greatest moment of his life, but it takes a strange turn when he sees a creature behind him. Earlier, he decided that the first person he would see would be himself. He never did anything alone and always caused trouble. He fell all the time, so Kunen hated himself. He created a mirror to see his reflection and was surprised by his appearance. He feared that seeing himself would make him hate himself more, but he realizes he's still the same person. So he turns to the creature and wonders what it's doing there. Kunen wonders if this is what Aiko really looks like, but the real Aiko enters the room. He's startled and realizes the creature can't be touched. He asks if her hair is braided, and she confirms. He compliments her maid uniform, and Aiko gets emotional. She realizes Kunen has achieved his dream, and he confirms he can see. Aiko wants to celebrate, so he suggests eating crab. Then Kunen asks if Aiko has a horn on her head. After she says no, he goes outside to see the world. It's quite different from what he expected, and his vision seems inverted. Aiko says everyone will be happy, but when he has a question, he asks if she sees the thing behind him. She has no idea what he's talking about. He thinks his experiment was a success, but there are inexplicable things. His family is happy that he can see, but something bothers him. His brother has wings, and his mother's eyes are different colors. It wasn't what he expected. He asks why they look so cool. They're happy Kunen is impressed because he makes them sound like amazing warriors. Something strange. So he asks Aiko if humans have wings. Aiko misunderstands completely and says all humans are born with wings. By opening their wings called freedom and potential, everyone can fly in the sky of the mind. That's crazy. So Kunen realizes he sees things others don't. Then everyone hears that Arson has returned home. Kunen thinks everyone looks cool and imagines how amazing his father will be. Arson arrives to congratulate Kunen, but he can't even understand what he is. The family plans a big party. After his parents leave, Kunen asks Ryota if their father is made of mist. Ryota also misunderstands completely. Kunen realizes he'll have to ask Zion for advice. At the castle, Victor goes to see Zion and is impressed with the cleanliness of the room. Victor says Kunen cleaned up the mess, so Zion tells him to state his purpose. Victor explains that the king has given permission for Zion to leave. Good news about Kunen. With our hero, he's warned that Zion and Mirica are arriving. Mirica is happy he's achieved his dream. Kunen shows the magic, the mirror eye that reflects everything. He calls it the glass eye, so Mirica asks if she can use it to see her. Kunen wants to see her because he's worked hard. He opens his eyes and says she has beautiful blonde hair and blue eyes. She's more beautiful than he imagined, but he's shocked to see a giant feather on her head. Mirica asks if it doesn't meet his standards, and Kunen assures her that's not it. He says she's beautiful, like a bird's feather, and she's confused. Aiko explains he's talking about the wings of freedom and potential. Dario is also there and explains that Mirica has trained hard. She's strong enough to knock down a large man with one blow. Kunen praises her sword, and Dario calls it his partner. This sword that Kunen spoke of is a sword on Dario's back that no one else sees. Zion arrives, and Kunen sees him as a brilliant figure, blinding light. So he says Zion shines too much. Zion expected this, explaining he always shines. Kunen doesn't understand and thinks Zion is the same type as his father. He wants to understand and asks to speak with him. Kunen explains everything and is surprised when Zion laughs. He says it's not a joke, but Zion can't help it because nothing makes sense. He doesn't believe in the crab or the feather on Mirica's head. Kunen says it's terrible because no matter where he goes, the crab will be there. Even when he marries Mirica, the crab will still be there. Zion gets serious, and they discuss how the colors Kunen sees are also different. Most importantly to Zion is that he shines more than everyone else. He says he's the brightest human, almost like the sun. This strains Kunen a lot, as he can't even look at him. Zion explains he has two guesses. The first is that Kunen is seeing the shape of people's souls. Kunen hopes that's not it, because that would mean his soul is shaped like a crab. Zion's second guess is that a magical disease causes visual hallucinations. He explains that places can accumulate magical power or be energy paths. Zion has been to one of those places and the magical power rendered him useless. As his consciousness faded, he saw things like what Kunen sees. Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough information to know which guess is correct. Kunen wonders if his experiment failed, but Zion doesn't let him think that. He says it's the masterpiece of his beloved student, and Kunen feels relieved. Zion explains that there are many creatures that come, but no one knows the right way. Everyone has their way of seeing, and that applies to Kunen too. Moreover, if Zion wonders what he sees, it might be something important. Kunen feels better and remembers he's only just started seeing. No one knows what will happen, so Zion tells him not to tell anyone. Kunen is happy with the advice but is still blinded by the light. Outside, Mirica remembers that Kunen's birthday is coming up. She thinks about a gift, and Aiko says he'd love anything from her. Kunen returns, and Zion reimagines Mirica with a feather on her head. Then Kunen packs his things for magic school. The room is empty, and Aiko notes how spacious it is. Later, everyone celebrates Kunen's 12th birthday. Arsen's gift is a staff and his mother gives a pen. Ryota gives a book, a map for food lovers. Ryota made the map looking for good restaurants for Kunen to visit on the way. Ryota says the school is very far, which makes everyone sad. Kunen's mother cries, but everyone remembers he'll graduate soon. Even far away, he'll always love his mother. Arsen reminds them it's time to celebrate, so everyone gets back to having fun. Afterward, Mirica asks if he's ready. Kunen says he's packed what's necessary and can buy the rest. Mirica says she has class on the day of his departure, so she won't be able to say goodbye. She apologizes, but gives him her present. It's a bracelet, and Mirica explains they'll have a pair. Kunen loves it and says the bracelet shines more than any crown. She says that when things get hard at school, he should talk to the bracelet as if it were her. Mirica says she'll do the same, so they'll stay close. The two promise to write often, and Kunen promises to return to her no matter what. Shortly after, Kunen prepares to leave. Everyone is emotional, but Arsen says they should say goodbye without tears. He's sure Kunen is more anxious than everyone, so they need to be strong. Everyone tries to hold back tears so as not to worry him, but they're shocked when he says he'll see them later. He gets into the carriage, and the family can't believe he doesn't seem worried. Aiko says goodbye to everyone and also gets in. Kunen departs and says he'll see everyone in a few years. Kunen is excited and wonders what kind of sorcerers he'll meet at school. We see other places as students also head to school. One of them is a saint named Race. After traveling 5 days, Kunen explains it will take another month to reach the school. It's very far, so they'll stop at his grandfather's mansion. Unfortunately, Aiko explains that's where they'll part ways. She wants to get married and is past the age. Aiko says it's now or never, so she needs to find someone. Kunen wonders if he'll live without her, so Aiko says he can marry her. Kunen doesn't know what to say, but they arrive at his grandfather's house. Kunen says he hasn't been here in 4 years, but doesn't remember why he came. Aiko remembers it's a huge library, and Kunen dragged the whole family there to find magic books. He told his parents he wouldn't stop dancing until they agreed, so they had no choice. His grandfather arrives to greet Kunen, and he sees him with horns on his head. That means his mother is a hero, and his grandfather is a demon lord. His grandfather wants to celebrate his enrollment, and says he'll buy whatever he wants. Kunen is too humble to ask, but his grandfather says he'll buy expensive jewelry. Aiko interrupts, and reveals that Kunen's mother sent a letter. The letter says he can't spend more than 500,000 NECA on Kunen. His grandfather is disappointed, but that's a lot of money. Aiko says that's 2 months' work for her. His grandfather says they can keep it a secret and offers a large ship. Kunen doesn't want to buy anything and explains he needs a new maid. He came to find someone to replace Aiko. His grandfather brings the replacement, and the girl introduces herself as Rinko. She explains she took the job for the good pay, as she's saving for her future marriage. Rinko is Aiko's younger sister, who recommended the job. Rinko explains that unlike her sister, she already has a fiancé. Aiko wants to fight over the insult, but Rinko says she only said it to make it clear she's not available. Kunen says she doesn't need to worry, as he also has a fiancé. Kunen makes one of his strange jokes, and is happy Rinko understands his humor. She's like Aiko, and says she looks forward to serving Kunen. Rinko says she was nervous because she heard Kunen is the hero's son. After meeting him, she sees he's a very nice boy. While they prepare food, Aiko explains that Kunen forgets to eat when studying, so Rinko will have to remember to make a sandwich for him to eat while he studies. Aiko has known Kunen for a long time and tells Rinko about the things he likes. This makes her remember the first time they met. Kunen was shy, but they soon became friends. They've been through a lot together and always got along well. Her last memory is of how Kunen didn't want her to leave. His 2 teachers left him around the same time and he was getting lonely. Aiko cares a lot and tells Rinko that Kunen is still a child. He trusts too much, so she warns that if Rinko teaches him something bad, she'll have to answer to her. Rinko gives examples of what she might be talking about, but Aiko doesn't even want to hear it. Kunen is the sweetest boy, and Aiko can't stand the idea of him being corrupted by some temptation. Rinko agrees to keep an eye on the girls he talks to, but notes that Kunen is a gentleman. He always compliments girls, which makes him an easy target. Rinko has heard all about his charm from Aiko, so she says he'll probably become a womanizer. This enrages Aiko, who says Kunen is an angel. Kunen doesn't help by using his charm to compliment the girls on the great sandwich they made. The next morning, it's time for Kunen to continue his journey. He must say goodbye to Aiko, so he remembers what he said when Jenny left. He said he'd never be okay if Aiko left him, and he still feels the same. Now, he's far from his whole family, from the sorcerers and even from Mirica. Soon he'll be far from Aiko too, and will be completely alone at school. However, Kunen knows this is what he wanted and chose. Kunen doesn't feel bad, as Aiko reminds him he can always visit her. Kunen fears it might take a few years, and Aiko says she might have a child by then. It's time to leave. so he says his final goodbye. Kunen's grandfather wanted him to stay, but Kunen said it was time to go. Rinko thought it was strange to leave without listening to the old man, but Kunen said it was the best thing to do. Kunen thanked Rinko for accompanying him and reminded her that her fiancé would have to wait a few years. Kunen asked if that was okay, and Rinko said her fiancé supports it because they want to save up to open a shop. Kunen asked if it was money laundering, but Rinko explained they just wanted a shop. Kunen thought about his new life and the desire to meet new people. Shortly after, Rinko was amazed by the magic shops as they entered the city. Kunen explained it was because they were close to Darashi, a nation full of magic. Suddenly, a shop caught Kunen's attention, and he wondered if the books were really about magic. Rinko reminded him that his grandfather's library was bigger, but Kunen said there weren't that many magic books there. Unfortunately, Kunen said buying any of those books would bankrupt them. Rinko was shocked to see that a single book cost 5 million neka. Kunen explained that magic books are unique, so they cost a fortune. The shop owner asked if Kunen was a student at the magic school, and he revealed he was an applicant. She was delighted to learn he used water magic and asked for a demonstration. Kunen didn't refuse and used Aori to create a water cat. The girl was amazed, and Kunen asked if she was a sorceress. She said no, just someone who loves magic. She's an enthusiast and was happy to meet a sorcerer who casts such an adorable spell. She explained that Darashi is dangerous, so she can only wish him luck. Kunen didn't understand, so she revealed that this year, the Saint of the Holy Kingdom has enrolled in the school. Last year, they had the Prince of Hell and the Thunder of the New Kingdom. She told Kunen he was lucky because she just received a second-hand grimoire from the most popular sorcerer, Zion Lee. She offered a discount, but he refused. Rinko asked why he didn't take it, since the price was great. Kunen said he didn't buy it because he already knew the contents, and it was probably a copy he made himself. The next stop was a clothing store, and the owner got nervous. Kunen is a well-dressed boy, so the owner thought he was judging the quality. Actually, Kunen explained he was touching the clothes to memorize the texture. Kunen asked what the scarf was made of, and the man explained it was dark fox fur. It's very rare, so he didn't want Kunen to touch it so much. The man was stunned when Kunen used Aori to create the animal. Being able to reproduce animals with magic is incredible, and the man couldn't believe the realism. Kunen can reproduce anything if he knows the texture, so the man asked if he could even create a woman. That was a red flag for Rinko, who told the guy to stop corrupting Kunen. Kunen explained that reproducing a human is too complicated, and he always gets scolded when he tries. They left immediately, and the owner tried to explain himself. He only mentioned that because he has a crush on someone, but Rinko said he only made things worse. After they left, a group of girls entered the shop led by Race. They heard the owner had a rare dark fox scarf, and Race wanted to see it. The others were shocked to see a real fox in his hands, but Race realized it was a spell. She destroyed the spell and apologized for not knowing it was made of water. The girls were intrigued and analyzed the remaining magic. From the way it exploded, they saw it was made with little magical power. This spell is worth Race's knowledge, so she became very interested. Later, Kunen and Rinko finally arrived at Darashi. Kunen was overjoyed, and Rinko reminded him he needed to rest. All students of the magic school live in a dormitory, and an attendant can live with them if requested. Unfortunately, they told Kunen that the dormitory was full and there were no vacancies. The deadline for dormitory registration had already passed, and Kunen couldn't believe Zion never warned him about this. At the castle, Zion made a triumphant entrance and told Mond he needed to speak with him urgently. It's a very serious matter and has to do with his beloved student. Back to our hero, Rinko asked if they should stay in an inn. He'll be at school for years, so he said he might need to rent a house. He's sure there will be many magic expenses, so he'll need to manage his finances. At that moment, the school official gave Kunen information about real estate agents. After seeing a few places, Kunen chose his new home. Elsewhere, a mysterious being received the list of new students at the magic school. The mysterious being heard they have the cream of the crop this year, and a guy confirmed that some are eligible for the advanced class. The mysterious man was intrigued by Kunen, and the guy explained that he's a student of Zion Lee. Later, Kunen prepared for the entrance exam, but Rinko was informed she couldn't enter. Only students and authorized personnel can enter, so Rinko had an idea. She tried to bribe the guard, but it didn't work. A girl took Kunen inside and introduced herself as La Bella. Kunen used his charm to compliment her name, and La Bella couldn't believe how strange he was. Kunen was taken to the other applicants, and they all waited together. They noticed Kunen wore an eye patch, and he couldn't wait to start. Kunen saw the other applicants in strange ways because of his eyes and said this would be interesting. Kunen went straight to Rice and asked if she was the saint of the Holy Kingdom. Rice asked why he wanted to know, and Kunen said she was amazing. She's of the light attribute, and he's never known one. It's the only attribute that allows healing, so he had many questions. Kunen wanted to learn from her, but she pointed out that light is above all other attributes. She said it would be a waste of time, as inferior magic cannot learn from the superior. The other applicants pointed out that there's no hierarchy in magic, but Race doesn't understand how they feel. She has no emotions like a normal person and doesn't realize when she offends someone. Before they could get to know each other better, Race wanted everyone to know that she is a hero. Kunen was even more fascinated by her and wanted to know more. Then the teacher Soph arrived, and Kunen immediately felt how powerful he was. Soph introduced himself and introduced his assistant, Safi. He congratulated everyone on their enrollment, but the students were shocked. They thought there would be some kind of test, but Soph said it wouldn't be necessary. In this school, students basically pass if they are sorcerers. The students had never heard that before. Why doesn't the school announce it? Soph explained that sorcerers with crests are rare and precious, so the school always accepts them. Rice pointed out that she studied hard for the exam, and Soph revealed there would still be one. Instead of determining entrance, the exam would determine which courses they would take at school. The first level is known as Fundamentals, a class to learn the basics of magic. The second level is assisted by teachers, more like a normal school. The advanced third level is called Independent Research. These students usually never spend time in the classroom. They choose what they want to do, what to learn, and study wherever they want. They can choose to improve their magical skills or create new spells. They can write grimoires or invent magical tools. This advanced class sounds amazing to Kunen, as he could research whatever he wanted. However, Soph explained that the advanced class is for training elite sorcerers. Getting in and graduating won't be easy. The 4 students there came with letters of recommendation, as they are believed to have the ability for the advanced class. The exam will serve to prove whether they're right or not. First, the practical skills test, so Soph asked for everyone's information. He wants to know their crest attribute, level, and how many spells they can use. Hank stepped forward and explained he has a 2-star fire crest. He can use 7 spells, so Soph asked him to demonstrate his best. Hank surprised everyone with his kill spell, and Rhea knows it well. It's a simple elemental spell, but its structure allows for unlimited applications. Soph was satisfied with the demonstration as Hank's control is excellent. Rhea's attribute is wind, and he's 2 stars. He has 8 spells, and Soph said he's also a 2-star wind crest. Rhea must demonstrate his best spell, so he asked everyone to step back. His wind spell is immensely powerful, and the preparation alone impressed everyone. The attack was even more impressive, and Soph said it's intermediate magic. This spell collects magical power in the air and turns it into wind. Rice was next, saying her attribute is 3-star light. She can use 5 spells, and Kunen still couldn't believe she was a rare light user. Most surprising is that she's 3 stars. Rice said her best spell is healing, but she couldn't demonstrate because no one was injured. Instead, she used an attack, and Kunen was shocked by its speed. Kunen was last, explaining he's a 2-star water mage. He only has 2 spells, and everyone was surprised. His spells are Aori and Arubu, both elementary. Despite that, Soph said he received orders to make Kunen's exam extra difficult. He revealed there were 2 letters of recommendation for Kunen. One was from the Grand Master of the Royal Sorcerers, but the request to make the exam difficult came from Kunen's master. Kunen was surprised to learn that Soph knows Zion Lee, but Soph explained that every sorcerer in education knows him. According to Zion, Kunen would complete any task, so he asked for a difficult exam. Safi was irritated every time she heard Kunen speak, so she finally said something. She hates his pretentious calm and how he's a flirt. Kunen is the supposed masterpiece of a man who rarely recognizes anyone, so she wants to give him the hardest exam and send him home. Kunen asked if Safi has any history with Zion, but she refused to answer. It's time for the practical exam, so he told Race to watch closely. He hoped they could go out afterward, but Soph said the flirting time was over and used the spell Furuguru, telling Kunen to try to hit him. The other students were stunned, as Furuguru is an intermediate spell that creates a wind wall around the caster. It's a whirlwind of magical power that will easily repel water. Soph thought about how the strong wind would block the water, and that someone without attack magic couldn't break through it. He said even the strongest sorcerers would have trouble, but he was surprised when Kunen said he thought the test would be more challenging. Kunen used Aori and created several water spheres. That's impressive, but Soph said it wouldn't be enough to break through. Kunen started to say the word multiply, and everyone watched in awe as the number of spheres grew. He said multiply at least 10 times, and the field was covered in water spheres. Kunen colored the water red, and Soph realized what he was doing. Kunen surrounded him, so he had nowhere to run. He said it still wouldn't be enough, but Kunen said it was just a matter of time. He created a water chair and explained he could keep this up for at least 2 days. Soph is using a lot of magical power, so Kunen assured him he could win by exhaustion. There was no rule about a time limit, so Kunen determined the task was over. Soph was impressed because Kunen turned the task into an endurance test. Soph is at a disadvantage because if he uses less magical power, he'll be overwhelmed by the red mist. Soph had no choice but to admit defeat and told Kunen he'd won. Soph thought about how amazing it is that Kunen managed to beat him so quickly. He gave credit to Zion for sending a child with frightening potential. Later, Kunen told Race he'd like to combine his water magic with her light magic. Soph told everyone they would now have their individual interviews. Soph asked if there were questions, so Kunen asked if they could give a warning to Rice since she keeps rejecting him. Safi wished they could just send Kunen home, and Soph explained this is a critical moment in the test. Hank was the first to be interviewed. Kunen asked who would interview him and what would be asked. He asked if it would be about what kind of woman he likes, but Safi explained the topics can change. Ria was called next, and Kunen asked if they would be dismissed after the interview. Safi said yes, so Kunen reminded Race that they'd see each other in class. Race was taken, so Kunen told Safi he'd rather be alone with a lady. Safi was called, and she revealed she noticed something during Kunen's practical exam. She noticed that Kunen had an extra move in mind in case there was a time limit. Kunen confirmed and said he would use something with erosion and fusion. Soph was amazed again, as Kunen was going to erode his wind magic and fuse it with his water. That would have interfered with his magical power to gain control of the wind. Kunen wasn't sure if it would work, but knows that water can penetrate most materials. Kunen believes water is the strongest attribute, but hasn't been able to beat Zion yet, so he can't claim that yet. That's why he wants to study hard here and surpass his master one day. It was Kunen's turn to be interviewed, so Safi led him to a room. Kunen asked what was inside as he felt wind coming through the door. Safi explained that no one knows for sure, but simply put, it's night behind the door. Safi said she could accompany him if he wanted, but Kunen said he'd be fine. He was fascinated, so he entered. It was very dark inside and Kunen couldn't see anything. His magical power didn't detect anything, and his glass eye didn't see anything either. The floor was dirt, and he could feel the wind. He could smell earth and grass and assumed there was a starry sky above him. Then a being said he must be Zion Lee's student. Kunen felt several creatures around him and determined there were 7 in total. Kunen introduced himself, and the being said that Zion was a prodigy who forced him to recognize him. The being approached Kunen, but he asked it not to come closer. Kunen explained he has a fiancée, so he can't approach another woman. The being pointed out that Kunen had been hitting on Race non-stop, but Kunen said he just wanted to learn about her magic. The being explained it's much older than him, but Kunen said he never changes how he treats women based on age. Kunen even used his charm, saying he's sure this being is a skilled sorcerer. The being asked if Kunen learned anything today, and he said yes. The magic he saw was all new to him, and he'd love to apply it to his own. The being liked Kunen's energy and said the interview was over. Kunen was free to leave and would be placed in the advanced class. The being introduced itself as Gray the Sorcerer and told Kunen to study hard. It started to explain what the future holds, but Kunen just wanted to go about his day. Elsewhere, Safi read a letter from Zion. Zion said he's very proud of Kunen, as he's 1 in a million. Zion trusts his abilities and is sure Kunen will surpass Soph in a few years. Zion did many things when he was at school, so he just hopes they don't take it out on his student. He hopes they'll give Kunen some time so he can become as much of a troublemaker as he was. Hank came to greet Kunen and asked if he already had a date with another girl. Soph watched them leave and said he's sure Kunen will become a cerulean mage. Back to Gray, she thought about how Kunen tried to see something while there. It was still unfinished, but he used a spell Gray had never seen before. Gray looks forward to seeing what Kunen can do and laughs like a maniac. Shortly after, Kunen's parents read a letter they received from Rinko. It revealed that Kunen passed the exam with flying colors and was placed in the advanced class. It's the highest class in the school, so his parents were very proud. They were horrified to learn that he painted the schoolyard red during the exam, and he's gaining a reputation. The other students call him Kunen of the Blood Sea incident, and he's becoming known as a troublemaker. Rinko said it's fine because that's just Kunen's way, but Arson disagreed. It's unacceptable to have so many problems right after enrollment, so he decided not to send Kunen money for a month as punishment. To make matters worse, Kunen learned that allowances are prohibited in his class. Kunen didn't mind, as that's how magic school works. The other students weren't so understanding, as it means advanced students must support themselves. Reyes said she can't accept this because she came here to learn magic. This will require all her effort, and she has no time to figure out how to pay the bills. The teachers pointed out that they are in the advanced class, where elite sorcerers are trained. One of the conditions for being elite is being able to earn money. Then the other students were shocked to learn that Reyes' living expenses are 15.5 million Nika per month. She has 2 maids who are also her guards, and besides expenses, she has to pay their salaries. The others wondered what she would do, and she had no idea. Later, the group learned that each advanced class student has their own laboratory. Laboratory use is free, but they are responsible for the medicines and books for their research. They are free to study hard or relax. The choice is theirs. However, if they don't earn enough credits, they'll be demoted to the 2nd level. They were informed that credits are earned through experiments and achievements in magic. Achievements recognized by the teachers will earn credits and affect their promotion. The masters wish them luck, and Kunen says he'll be fine. He won't have trouble supporting himself as he and his master have earned good money. Kunen has dreamed of working with magic since childhood, and this is his perfect chance to learn. He wants to know how Reyes earns money with light magic, so he invites her to a magic perfume shop to talk. Unfortunately for him, Reyes rejects him once more. Later, Rinko asks what's wrong with Kunen, and he explains the saint rejected him. Rinko says it's time to teach him a lesson, as he can't be so persistent with girls. A gentleman must always respect a girl's wishes above all else. Rinko points out that he shouldn't even be alone with her. Rinko changes the subject and wonders how Kunen will earn money since he's not getting an allowance. Kunen knows what she's really worried about and assures her he'll be able to continue paying her salary. At Reyes' house, one of her guards called the school and confirmed they cannot receive an allowance. Reyes cannot receive money from the Holy Kingdom or from donations. To make matters worse, she cannot use her healing magic for commercial purposes. The next day, Reyes desperately tries to think of how to pay her 1.5 million Neka expenses. At that moment, she sees other students lining up in front of Kunen. The others explain that he started a business that was an instant success. He's taking orders from exhausted students who pull all-nighters studying. The students desperately need sleep, and that's where Kunen comes in to provide his service. He personally guarantees they'll get good rest and takes his next customer to the lab. All spots are filled, so he asks the others to wait about 30 minutes. Kunen's friends ask what kind of business this is, and he explains he created a sleep sanctuary. In the room, his friends are shocked to see that he helps students sleep with his waterbeds. They can't believe it, as the student who just entered is already asleep. Kunen's business is a success because students are exhausted after days without sleep. Kunen knows this well because he lost a lot of sleep when doing research with Zion. The teachers are impressed and approve of Kunen's request for extra lab space. The only condition is that he make the space available to the teachers as well. Kunen doesn't think it's right to charge the masters, but they assure him it's fine. Kunen's business is a resounding success, and he's received great reviews. Students say they feel renewed as if they've slept all day with just a 60-minute nap. Some mysterious students arrive to take a nap and seem to have a special interest in our hero. Reyes isn't doing as well as Kunen and says life is very hard. She asked the teachers for help, and they suggested she ask Kunen for advice. Reyes asked the other students, and they also told her to go to Kunen. Reyes doesn't want to talk to him because he keeps hitting on her, but she has no choice. The next day, she goes to see Kunen and says, this is humiliating for her. She never wanted to depend on Kunen, because you never know what he might want in return. Luckily for her, Kunen is a gentleman, and says he would never take advantage of a lady's vulnerability. Before explaining the situation, Kunen asks her to bring Professor Safi. Safi arrives, and Kunen explains he thought it best not to be alone with a lady. After Reyes reveals the situation, he understands she has no way to make money. Kunen suggests she start a healing business and assures her she'd make a lot of money. Reyes explains that her healing magic is a sacred power granted by her ancestors and by God. It would be immensely disrespectful, so she cannot use it for profit. Reyes can't use her magic and has no capital to start a business. Kunen asks if she can use her purification magic for profit, and she says there's no problem. Kunen has an idea and asks if she'd like to create and sell magical tools with him. Safi objects as things can get complicated if the tool sells well. Kunen tells her not to worry as Reyes needs money. It might get complicated, but they shouldn't worry about that until they start selling. Reyes agrees to try, and Kunen celebrates because he'll finally get to see light magic experiments. They go to see Professor Surya, and Kunen says her skin is as smooth as an ice road. Surya is delighted and attributes it to Kunen's waterbed. She feels much younger and understands why his business is so popular. She's a light mage and introduces herself to the saint. She gives Kunen what he asked for, and Reyes is surprised to see that it's Sheila seeds. Sheila seeds are a sacred herb, and Kunen says they're going to cultivate them. Race says it's impossible, as the sacred herb only grows in Holy Land. Kunen knows all about this, as he's researched sacred herbs and holy lands. Holy Land is a place imbued with sacred magic and purification power. Kunen's great plan is to see if Rice can artificially create a holy land with her purification magic. The saint's personal spell is called Santum, and Kunen thinks it might work. A sacred barrier created by Santum will reproduce the state of Holy Land. There are records documenting their similarities, so Surya thinks it's worth a try. Race uses Santum to create a barrier around the planted seeds. To everyone's surprise, it works, and the seeds begin to sprout. It's an incredible discovery, so Kunen says he needs to write down everything that happened. He just witnessed light magic barrier and fears a book won't be enough to document everything. Race thought Kunen was very bossy, but realizes he gets like this when it comes to magic. She concludes that Kunen wasn't hitting on her before. He just wanted to experiment with magic. That's a huge relief, so she wonders what they'll do now. Kunen says they should have lunch together, and Race is disappointed again. She wanted to know what they'd do with the sacred herb, so Kunen explains the rest of the plan. They'll process the herb to make medicine. Sacred Shilla is rare and expensive, and they could easily make the 1.5 million NECA she needs. Race can't believe it, as she spent a lot of time trying to think of something alone. She couldn't, no matter how hard she tried, but Kunen found a way to make money in no time. She says she's glad Kunen's 1 million NECA won't be wasted, so Race asks what she's talking about. Surya explains that Kunen spent a lot of money on the seeds. One seed costs 200,000 NECA, totaling 1 million. The agreement was that the seeds would only be free upon successful cultivation and a growth report. If the experiment didn't work, Kunen would have to pay the full amount out of his own pocket. Kunen thanks Race for avoiding that, and she starts to see him in a different light. She apologizes for causing trouble, but Kunen says hearing a thank you would be much better. Race thanks him, and Kunen wonders if she's falling for him. Race is disappointed again, and says that would never happen. Shortly after, Surya is delighted to see how much the plants have grown. They crush some petals, and the medicine is almost ready. Kunen uses a rubu, and it proves to be the finishing touch. They take the medicine to a shop, and the owner is very impressed. These pills are unequivocally made from the sacred herb Shilla. Their purity makes them even more valuable, and the owner thinks this batch alone is worth at least 2 million nexa. To celebrate closing the deal, the group has a giant feast. Race's colleagues thank Kunen because they can be paid thanks to him. Kunen says it was a pleasure, as he got to write a report on light magic. After the meal, he thinks about how the food cost him 220,000 NECA out of pocket, and the girls drank vintage wine like it was water. Kunen finds the guys, and they say they're also having trouble making money. Kunen said he'd do anything to help them if they were ladies, but they're not. He feels bad, so he has some ideas. He tells Hank that he should make bacon for him to eat. Inside Kunen's lab, we see that the girls from before have just taken a nap. They're amazed and say this really is a sleep sanctuary. These girls don't like each other and realize they're all there to win over Kunen. Later, he shows the teachers his new product, a giant hairless rat. Kunen received feedback that if one of his pillows were different, it would be harder to fall asleep even on a waterbed. With the new invention, his customers will be able to sleep no matter what. The teachers are impressed, as he's built an efficient system to make money quickly. Rice, Hank, and Rhea are also doing well, all thanks to Kunen's advice. A month since they enrolled, it's clear they no longer need supervision. Safi wonders if the factions will get involved now, and the group of girls arrives looking for Kunen. That's what the teachers feared, as they can see a fierce battle forming. Kunen reveals his new product to customers and says the hairless rats are the perfect companions for a peaceful sleep. Kunen's business is going well, and many people are already booking time with the new accessory. He sees Hank cooking bacon outside and notices he burned the food once again. Meanwhile, the group of girls continues their search for our hero. Kunen wants Hank to make edible bacon, but he's never made bacon with fire magic before. Kunen explains that bacon is smoked for a long time, rather than put over a fire. He thinks Hank can do it if he maintains a constant heat. Meanwhile, Rhea tries to fly exactly as Kunen told him. It's not going well, but Kunen is there to keep Rhea from getting hurt. Kunen says he needs to figure out how to float with stability first. In the cafeteria, the chef hands Kunen the sandwiches he ordered. The chef warns that all the bacon burned, but Kunen says he can't waste food. Hank takes responsibility for the failure, saying he'll eat the sandwiches. Rhea will also eat because he desperately needs to save money. Race also doesn't want to spend, so the four eat the sandwiches. The sandwiches are inedible, and Rhea even has to remove the bacon. Race gets sick from just one bite, and Hank apologizes for the failure. Kunen returns to his business, and his customers desperately need his services. They've been pulling all-nighters and need good sleep. The group of girls tries to cut in line to talk to Kunen, but is sent to the back. They finally manage to talk to him after a long wait, but get distracted. Instead of saying what they originally wanted, they're captivated by Kunen's new product. The waterbeds were already amazing, and now there's this new item for even better rest. They completely forget why they're there and fall asleep with the new pillows. Meanwhile, Hank continues trying to make bacon. Producing fire is easy, but maintaining heat at a certain temperature is difficult. Rhea is also improving as he learns to stabilize in the air. Race makes a new batch of Sheila and learns that Surya was praising the quality of her previous report. Race is still not convinced, so she wonders why it's necessary to make money with magic. Kes explains that the four have only been doing experiments and research on magic since they were young. In society, there are people who try to deceive and take advantage of naive mages like them. The teacher's job is to train mages who can use their powers correctly by having them work to learn about society. Race has progressed well, so Kes says it's Rhea's turn. She hopes things go well for them, and Race believes they will because they have Kunen. She says he's a frivolous person, but the guys will certainly learn a lot from him. At that moment, Kes remembers that recruitment for the factions started today. Elsewhere, a group of guys wonders where the students they sent for recruitment are. They remember they don't need to rush, as it's only the first day. Later, Race tells the others about the recruitment. The recruiters are the organizations of advanced class students. Among them, the three largest factions are ability, harmony, and rationality. In the advanced class, students are already treated as full-fledged mages. The teachers don't intervene much, so the factions are like mutual aid associations for students who help each other. Hank points out that there are experiments that require a lot of help. Recruitment was forbidden for new students in the first month so they could get used to school life. Yesterday was the first day, so they should be recruited soon. Hank is thinking of joining Harmony, but the others haven't chosen yet. As they think, they decide to eat today's sandwiches. Hank proudly explains that he didn't burn the bacon this time, as he roasted it slowly over low heat. Unfortunately, this time it's too salty, so he'll have to try again. Meanwhile, in one of the factions, the representative scolds members for not recruiting the person they want. The same happens in another faction, as a girl explains she couldn't recruit because she fell asleep. A third girl says the same to her faction and explains she just couldn't resist his magic. They're all talking about Kunen, and his powers are expected since he's a student of Zion Lee. The representatives of each faction meet because they've come to find Kunen. They refuse to lose, so they wonder how to decide who will speak to him first. Meanwhile, Hank is exhausted after trying to make decent bacon once again. Kunen reminds him that he needs to do this to earn enough credits to stay in the advanced class. As for Rhea, he's starting to get the hang of floating. Kunen wants him to learn to move in the air, so he uses Iori to surround him with a water cushion. Rhea is impressed, as there's probably no water Kunen can't create. As for Rhea, he was born in a baron's house in the countryside. He was called the best mage in the nation, and people thought he would be the future royal mage. However, it turned out he was just a big fish in a small pond. Rhea is feeling down, but Kunen tells him to stay focused. Rhea regains motivation and remembers he just needs to focus on making money. He must do this for his family, who worked hard to save money so he could attend the academy. Kunen tells him to just do his best and that he'll record everything that happens. At that moment, they hear a loud noise and wonder if there's some kind of magic experiment. Actually, it's the representatives who decided how to settle the argument. The guy named Baal says Kunen's skills fit best in the ability faction. Baal can use earth magic, so he attacks the others. The girl named Shilton says Kunen has the ability to work in a team and give advice to colleagues. She declares that the Harmony faction is best for him and attacks the others with her lightning magic. Finally, the guy named Ari says Kunen's exceptional magic belongs to the Rationality faction. He uses some kind of dark magic, and his attack can be seen even from where Kunen is. Meanwhile, Hank struggles to find the perfect combination of temperature and cooking time. He can't decide between high or low heat. Kunen wonders if he's going to leave it raw this time. Hank says his only options are high or low, but Kunen wants him to think outside the box. He reminds Hank that they're no longer restricted from experimenting and that he can feel free. Kunen points out that fire could even have different colored scents. Hank has never heard of that, so he tells him to try all possible means and any magical tricks he can imagine. At that moment, Kunen is told that a teacher desperately needs his services. Before leaving, Hank wonders if it was Zion who taught Kunen to think outside the box. Kunen explains it wasn't him, but his first teacher. She taught that creativity was a form of talent where you feel inspired and try to change your flames to a different color. Hank is even surprised when it works and thinks about adding a scent. He reflects for a second and realizes he should try adding a scent. If he adds flavor to the scent of herbs, it should work. Hank is surprised to realize that this is what experimenting is all about. He spent so much time as a teacher's assistant that he forgot it's good to try new things. Before he can continue, Hank is caught off guard when he's invited to join Harmony. Nearby, Rhea panics as he loses control in the air. He falls, and a mysterious girl explains what he did wrong. He lost his balance because he tried to forcefully control the wind. Instead, she says he should try to go along with the wind. Later, everyone is surprised when Hank's sandwiches actually turn out good. They don't make Race nauseous, and her body doesn't reject them as a foreign object. Kunen says Hank should continue like this and could even try bacon from different meats. Hank is ahead of him, as he's already made bacon from fish, chicken, and lamb. Kunen is impressed but points out that the four of them can't eat all of it. Instead, they go to the chef, who says he'd be happy to buy such high-quality meat. As for Rhea, he finally managed to learn to fly. He says it was because he received advice from a veteran of rationality. Kunen says that once Rhea learns to fly long distances, he can start a delivery service. That would be his way of making money, so Rhea thanks Kunen for all the advice. At that moment, Rhea reveals he was invited to join Rationality. He liked the girl who spoke to him and is thinking of joining. Hank reveals he was invited to Harmony, and Race says she was invited to Ability. Kunen wonders why he hasn't been invited yet, and the others think it's because the factions are fighting over him. Outside, we see that the representatives almost eliminated each other over the rights to Kunen. The match was set along with the right to negotiate first with Kunen. The Ability faction starts, then Harmony, and Rationality closes. Ability takes the lead by going first, but in the end, the decision will be Kunen's. Bale is ready to recruit our hero and calls his best negotiator. Thanks for watching the recap. Don't forget to leave a like on the video. If you made it this far and want more deep dives into anime that actually respect your intelligence, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for Curious Nerd. We break down the smartest strategies, the craziest plots, and everything in between. Thanks for watching.